Cyril often loved to eavesdrop on what the people around her were talking about, and often even intervened in a conversation, trying to help resolve disputes. People didn't like her for that. They were even afraid. They tried not to discuss anything with her. Only occasionally did they start conversation, and even then only on neutral topics, such as a house or weather. It's surprising that with such an unpleasant feature of hers, Siri managed to open her own small shop. Once, while helping her employee put the goods on the shelves, the woman overheard a conversation between her guard and an elderly neighbor who had come up to him. The man shook his head and said, "No, no, we have never had this, and never will. You can be sure, Mrs. Bree." Dumbfounded by what she heard, Cyril brushed to them, grabbed the grandma by the hand, and interrupting the conversation, began to persuade, saying, "We don't? We have everything. And even if we don't have it now, it'll definitely appear soon. I promise you, Granny." And then she looked at the guard menacingly. Then she whispered, "What the heck are you doing? Never say there's a shortage of goods in the store. Never. Otherwise you will scare away all the customers." But he wasn't even looking at her. It turned out that the grandmother, who began to cry in horror for some reason, fainted. The guard barely had time to catch her. The owner of the store immediately called an ambulance and the old woman was taken away. Fortunately, as the doctor said, everything worked out. Mrs. Bree was just nervous and nothing threatened her life. But Cyril was still tormented by the question why the elderly visitor lost consciousness from her harmless words. On the contrary, she wanted to cheer her up. Then the woman went to the guard and asked what kind of product they were talking about with the old woman. He smiled and said with a sigh, "Mrs. Bree saw on the news that a hurricane might happen somewhere, but she didn't know where exactly, and I wanted to assure her that everything was going to be okay. I was trying to convince her that in this city we've never had anything like that, and never will." Siri bit her lip. From shame, she wanted to sink into the ground. The woman asked the guard for forgiveness, promising never to interrupt people without listening to the end. And in general, not to get involved in other people's conversations. Since then, she stopped eavesdropping, and everything in her life began to improve. People began to trust her more willingly and were no longer afraid to talk on more serious topics than cucumbers and tomatoes. Don't stick your nose into other people's business, even if you only wish the best. After all, not knowing the details of the lives of other people, we can inadvertently harm them.